All right, I am here in Santa Fe, about almost 2 weeks into the road trip, and I'm so excited to reconnect with Sharna, my Reiki master, and ask her some questions about Reiki and get a little bit deeper into why Reiki, what Reiki is all about, share both of our experiences, some clients' experiences, and just kind of chat and reconnect.
Yay!
Cool?
Yes,
All right.
so excited.
In a couple sentences or less, what is Reiki?
So Reiki is a form of energy medicine, energy healing. It's a Japanese methodology that's existed for centuries in Japan. And the word Reiki is actually two words in Japanese. One means God, goddess, universe, spirit, our connection to a higher plane. And ki or chi is life force. So Reiki is that universally directed life force energy that comes through all of us. It's a form of hands-on healing touch in which we take that energy, direct it through our bodies, and put our hands on other people to help clear blockages. It pairs really well with acupuncture and the meridian system, allowing that flow of universal life force energy to move blockages out of the body. So at minimum, it promotes relaxation and stress reduction. But as a lot of us know, stress is a huge factor in so many health issues. So it's fantastic for insomnia, anxiety, depression, recovering after surgery, people that have are working on personal development, spiritual development, things of that nature.
Yeah, definitely. I've noticed for me, the experience has been very transformative in some ways, and then also releasing just stuck stuff that I didn't necessarily know was there or maybe didn't realize I was holding on to. So for people who are unsure or skeptical about Reiki but think that they need something in their lives to help with healing, or they have something that they do want to work on, is there something that you tell them or kind of your selling point on Reiki?
For a lot of people, there's this lack of feeling that there's any scientific basis in energy healing. And I think there also, in the holistic health movement, there are a lot of practitioners out there that as wonderful and beautiful and as amazing as they are sometimes a little bit ungrounded, right? And we kind of have this crossover from the hippie generation. And so there's a lot of skepticism about this woo-woo magic, okay, you're going to touch me with your hands and heal me. What is that about? And so I go into quantum physics and really the concept that we are all energy matter. And a solid is simply energy that is slowed down enough to become solid.
Vibrating in a certain state.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So our ability to access the energy that's all around us that we can't actually see with our own eyes, but we can feel in the way that you sit next to somebody and you know whether or not they feel good to you or they don't feel good to you.
Okay.
Or we'll talk about walking into a room, and you walk into this place and you're just like, oh gosh, it just doesn't feel good in here to me. It's something about feels heavy or depressing, and then you walk into other spaces that are bright and alive and you like it and it feels good. So we all have these extrasensory perception mechanisms within ourselves, but it's whether or not we're aware of them and tuned into them or turn them off. And one of the examples I use is a candle and a flame. And I think I might have shared this in our Reiki 1 or 2, but the amount of the candle or of a flame that you can actually see, by the time you get to the point where you're touching what you can see, you're burning your finger, but you can feel the heat much farther away before you can actually start to see it. And then when you blow a candle out, how much of that process of blowing the candle out do you actually see with your naked eye? All you see is the candle snuffing, and yet there's actually breath moving through your mouth that creates the extinguishing of the flame. So there's a lot that happens in our world that we don't see with the naked eye. And so I think for a lot of people, it's we're still stuck in that Newtonian view of the mechanical universe, which is not what we understand science and physics to really be about.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's so cool. So in that way, I know you do a lot of distance work. How does that work? And are people more skeptical of distance work than actually a hands-on Reiki healing session?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. But distance work is some of my favorite work to do because it creates believers. As much as somebody can come into your office and see you and meet you, and there's so many things that I think people attribute the experience to. Well, oh, you're just a nice person.
Right.
Or, oh, I was sitting in front of you. You could tell that about me from X, Y, or Z. Or you're physically putting your hands on me. Of course I feel heat.
Right.
So doing distance work is amazing because you don't see the person, you've got a connection with their voice, and the majority of my distance clients I've never met before.
Wow.
A lot of times I absolutely have no idea what they're contacting me for. And I do get clients that test me all the time. And in the very beginning, I used to get really kind of unrattled about it, like, well, why are you calling me if you're not going to tell me what's wrong with you, and they want...
How good are you really?
Right, exactly. And I actually get that exact statement a lot of the times. But as my own faith in my practice has grown, and my ability to put my ego to the side, right? Because that's really what that's about.
Yeah.
Then it just becomes a conversation with the person. So the way that distance Reiki works is it works on the idea of the Hermetic law of similarity. And that's basically that we are all made up of the same energy matter. And so that I can affect you across distance and across time based on this idea that we're actually all really connected. So it's finding the thread of your energy that I kind of connect to. And I do that with somebody's name. I do that with a photo of them. And then also with the connection to their voice. I have a crystal that I map their energetic body to. You could map it to absolutely anything. I just love using crystals because you get that extra benefit of all of the juicy energy that's running through the crystal. So that energy, their energy body is mapped to the crystal, and then the Reiki goes into the crystal. And then I kind of in my mind create a holograph of that person's energy body and work on them in that way. And so really it doesn't matter if you're physically in front of me, or I have clients in Australia, Dubai, I have clients in Singapore and Canada, and all across the United States. And everybody has equal levels of being able to experience and feel that energy. So one of my favorite things is when I'm working on a client and haven't told them where I'm working, and they'll be like, oh my gosh, my foot is twitching. And I'll be like, that's exactly where I'm working. I'm working on your foot. Or I had a client whose ears were really heating up, and I was right over there by their ears. And so a lot of people will really be blown away by how they can feel my presence. Even in the room with them, I have several clients be like, I feel like you're hovering over on top of me. So it's those moments actually create believers in the majority of skeptics, which is one of my favorite things because I love this work and it's so powerful.
And then everyone's different, so everyone probably practices in their own way. I know for me, I'm really interested in pairing Reiki and yoga, getting some energy moving through physical practices, asana and breathwork, pranayama, and then doing some hands-on healing where other people may not incorporate that and have it more of a static practice.
Absolutely.
So when you talk about the tradition and the lineage and passing it down, I had been interested in Reiki for a really long time, but hadn't really found the right person that I wanted to learn from until I met you, and it was through a great recommendation of a friend, and I just felt like that energy was right. Do you have recommendations for people on how to find the right master or the right person to learn from?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And I'm similar to you as well in that learning energy therapy was something I've been interested in for probably like 10, 12 years before I actually made my way to a class. I would say really doing your research. There's a lot of information online where you can find Reiki masters. Research in terms of their bio. Look at their photo if you can't meet them in person. Have a conversation with them on the phone. And really get an understanding about what their approach is. The most important piece is that there's what we call in energy medicine resonance.
Yeah.
And that person feels like the right person to you. I really also feel that taking the time to get a really in-depth training. I think getting your level 1 and 2 in a weekend is probably fantastic for a lot of people that are very busy. But I do think that it doesn't allow for a lot of integration of information to be passed down. There's only so much the brain can take in over the course of a weekend. So I would really look at that too. Find something that works with your schedule, but also that gives enough depth that you can walk out of the class feeling like, yeah, I can actually practice on other people. That becomes super important for level 2. Level 1 is working on yourself. And so for some people, they can get what they need out of a short course.
Sure.
So that would be my suggestions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the process of getting certified or attuned in Reiki. So I did the level 1 and the level 2 with you, and you split them out over a month, where there's about a month in between. And level 1 is about learning what Reiki is all about and self-healing. I got really sick after the level 1. So it was like probably the worst I'd been sick in, I don't know, 6 or 10 years.
So sorry.
No. It was one of those, like, was it a sinus infection? Did it just happen to be that? Or was there really energy that was moving and shifting within me? You know, I don't think normal is the right word, but is that a common experience? Or what do people normally experience? Or, again, is it different for everybody?
Yeah, that's such a good question. So the Reiki, one of the things that makes Reiki unique as a form of energy healing is the attunement process. And this is where we, the Reiki master, channels out life force energy through ourselves and basically puts it into your energy body. The level 1 comes with 4 attunements traditionally. There are some masters that have combined those into only 1 attunement. Okay. I still do 4. It's a lot of work on the Reiki master because if you have a large class, you're doing, I mean, you can be doing upwards of 32 attunements. Wow. Which I think I did in your class.
Yeah.
And then the level 2 is only 1 attunement. Okay. So I believe that the attunement process is what creates this amazing energetic shift that happens within the body. And I've heard lots of different conjecture about what that is. I was taught that it was a Kundalini awakening in some people, not in everybody, in which that energy that kind of sits dormant at the base of the spine in the root chakra zings up through the spine and actually awakens this entire energetic process inside of the body. At minimum, it raises your vibration up to a higher level. And so even without the Kundalini bit, some people call it a Christ awakening too, that I've heard that term as well. Regardless, when you are raising your vibration, anything that's not on that same vibration has to drop away. Yeah. And unfortunately, because we're in these dense physical bodies, and a lot of us are holding on really, really, really tight, in order for that kind of breakaway to happen, it can cause illness. If you think about, I use a lot of times the analogy of a garden hose, right? So when that garden hose is kinked, things can't flow through. And that at minimum is what a blockage does. But if what's backed up behind there is old stuff that's like, you know, been sitting there since you were a kid, you know, when you let that go, what's going to have to come out is all that gunk. And a lot of times it's not a pleasant process.
So it's good.
It's good because you're letting go of it and it's not stuck in there anymore. But I would say probably 70 to 80% of my students have some kind of challenge after the attunement process. And I can't account for why the other 20 to 30% don't. I used to say that it was only the Reiki 1 attunement process that created that. But I've had similarly people have the same issues after the level 2. Most people, thankfully, don't have both. Okay. So I've tended to notice it's either the level 1 or the level 2 that brings it up. And then some people after the attunements will have amazing, like they're just floating on cloud 9. So I've had several students that have had that process that were just like, I'm on a pink cloud for like 3 months, and they're just incredible. They feel great. Yeah. So it's kind of an interesting process.
That is fascinating. I know when I did the level 2, I had a really great experience because you split that out over 2 weekends, at least for my training. And after the first weekend, I was like, I think I need to see Sharna and do like a one-on-one session, and things that I didn't think I was necessarily holding on to or had maybe mentally released but not physically released. I remember I sat down with you, and then even with one of the other students in our class when he was doing a session on me, I was like, I'm really letting this go. This is going to be my intention. And then the next day after the end of the training, things started moving in my life that hadn't been moving, which was just incredible. And that was sort of a good experience or a big experience on the opposite spectrum, not that sickness after level 1, but kind of, okay, things are finally starting to shift the way that I want them to. Yeah. So that was really cool. Yeah. Because I have people in my life who are not as physically active, and I find that disconnect between the mind and the body causes a lot of grief or a lot of suffering for them, and that's a huge reason why I love yoga and why I've been so drawn to it, because I think that connection can really help you, you know, let go of pain or let go of feelings or experience them and be, okay, I'm experiencing them, and then move through it with some physical movement and also some energetic movement.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and you know the way that I teach level 1 is in kind of segments between the body, the mind, the emotions, and the spirit.
Yeah.
And I find that most people are really comfortable in one or two areas, right? So some people have their physical body is really good and they're really in tune with their mind.
Yeah.
But their emotional body is just like stuck or repressed, or they're so we all have different areas in our lives that we're comfortable. A lot of us are very disconnected from our bodies though. And sometimes people are called to energy medicine because they don't want to be connected to the body.
Interesting.
And so I get a lot of people who really want to be up in the higher chakras, and they want to connect to their intuition, and they want to see things and experience things and kind of like live in this very floaty place. And you know that I tell people your body's your instrument.
Yeah.
So you can't do Reiki without your hands.
You have to be grounded.
With your feet or with another body part, but it requires us being inside of a physical body to do this kind of work. And so that groundedness is so important. And for a lot of people, reconnecting with their bodies is an extremely challenging piece of the Reiki process. So for a lot of people, the physical issues that they go through after the attunements, for a lot of them, it's reconnecting with the physical body.
I can totally see that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I should say this with the caveat that everybody is different. So one of the primary pieces of learning your self-care regimen is to understand what's necessary for you.
And what works with your body and what you need to function.
Absolutely, because everybody's different. Some people need a lot of sleep. Some people don't function really well on a ton of sleep. So I'll talk about my process, but also with the caveat that what's really important for self-care is understanding what's going to work for you. For me, the big ones are exercise, sleep, and diet, the way that I'm eating. And that's not to say dieting, that's to say the food that I put in my body. If I'm not doing all those three things, for sure I'm not going to be feeling well. I love to hike and I love to run. And so I'm out in nature pretty much every single day. And now that I live in Santa Fe,
amazing.
I get out on the trails. I mean, every day I get sun, so I get that. I touch the trees as I'm running. I probably look really ridiculous running. I probably look Phoebe from Friends, doing an awkward run down the trail.
You get some fresh air.
Exactly, right? Reconnected and regrounded in nature. For me, sleep is huge. If I'm not sleeping, I don't feel well. So I make sure that I go to bed at a reasonable hour. I usually get up pretty early. And then really eating a very clean diet. I don't drink alcohol. I do some caffeine, but I try to limit it. I used to have an issue with anxiety, still pops up sometimes, so caffeine's not so great for that. Very clean, organic, non-GMO, healthy foods. And then I balance that, right, with like my pizza and my pasta and things that I enjoy. That's kind of my core in terms of self-care. And then I expand it out dependent on what I need. I do self-Reiki every day. I meditate every day, but that doesn't look like how most people think what meditation looks like, right? Sometimes it's 5 minutes just sitting in my office quietly before my clients show up, reconnecting to my breath, reconnecting to my heartbeat, reconnecting to myself. I use crystals, I use sage, I do a lot of woo-woo things, I use my tuning forks and sound healing. For me, another big one has been learning to reach out, and I think that's something as a society that a lot of us are really challenged with doing. As much as we have these huge networks of social media and texting, and I mean, you can get a hold of anybody in probably 5 different ways in a given day, right? And yet our ability to reach out to others has been so greatly reduced. And I think, well, I could go on and on about why that is. I'm sure everybody has an opinion. But the standard of how we're supposed to look and be in the world, right? We're supposed to be doing 5 million different things and all of them perfectly.
And you as a healer are supposed to have it all set.
Right, exactly. So learning to reach out to people and saying when things aren't okay and, hey, I need a hand, could you help me, do you have a moment to talk? That's been a real challenge for me. And so learning how to do that, and even more so when people perceive you as being somebody that more or less has it together, although my family knows just that I really don't. So that part about reaching out and finding community is so huge, and I think a lot of us are challenged with that.
I love that you set up for your Reiki 2 level people the kind of Facebook group, because I think it's using social media in a way that's really beneficial. and sharing stories and asking questions and having you as a resource, but also having other people, because I think there can be this moment when we've come into this path, whatever it is, as someone who's working with other people and dealing with other people's stuff, that we don't know kind of how to pack it away. We've talked about that too. And so having people that are in a similar situation, or who can at least respond intelligently or with some experience, is really powerful. Have you found those people here in Santa Fe, or do you still have connections kind of all over the place, your core group of people?
A lot of my people are still in San Diego. I have a couple of really amazing people here in Santa Fe, and a friend of mine that I knew in my early 20s, and we did a lot of shamanic work together. Didn't talk for like a decade, and reconnected here. She lives here. Cool. And it's just like, oh my gosh, there you are again, right? The way that people show up on our path. So, and I have people in different parts of the country that I reach out to. I'm still working on that, right? So building that network of people that I feel comfortable enough with sharing. And I think that line that can sometimes be drawn between student and teacher too is something that I'm constantly figuring out how to negotiate. And because we don't have the same professional standards that, say, therapists do or faculty in a college do, there's a different way of figuring out how to manage those boundaries. So the Facebook group has been fantastic because it allows for all of you guys to come together, and I have students across the country. This last training I did here in Santa Fe, I had people come from 3 different cities to be here. So it creates a real opportunity for other people to connect, and also for me to get to see how you guys are doing, but then also to put things out there that I'm doing too. Yeah,
and take a step back sometimes too, and let us kind of figure out our stuff without having to be like, Sharna.
Yeah. And you guys do. I mean, I'm always so amazed. Every single class, I learn so much more, I feel like, from my students than they take from me. And it's such a neat part of the process to just always be a student. I love it.
Yeah. So there's a couple things I wanted to go back to when we were talking about self-care. The first is diet, and I was really happily surprised that you included the conversation on food in part of, I believe it was level 1 that we even talked about that. For me, caffeine is sort of my drug of choice. I like the little energy kick, but I definitely feel that it's different. I've done like a hormone cleansing diet before, and I can tell the differences when things are in balance for me. I certainly believe in eating, whole foods as much as possible with good nutrients, and that feeds our body. Do you make recommendations for your clients as well as far as diet goes?
Absolutely. That conversation is huge, and because I don't think that we really understand the way that what we put in our body changes everything about our structure and how it relates to our emotional body, how it relates to our mental body, the clarity of thought and thinking, and how much is in our food now that never was before. So all of us that are coming up and growing up in this, GMO processed food society, we actually have to do a lot more researching and a lot more looking at what is in the food that we're putting into our bodies, because there's a lot more additives than there really ever has been before. In terms of clients, I get a lot of people that come to me with issues with sleep, issues with anxiety, issues with depression. And those are one of my first conversations that I have with them is about diet. It's amazing how that really impacts. And from taking my level 1, one of my big ones is sugar. It is in everything. And it's in things that have corn and potato as their primary ingredients that we don't even think about that, like, oh, that's sugar, or the way that our serving sizes, are created. So you might look at something that has 5 grams of sugar, but the serving is like that much, right? Yeah. So really informing people about what it is that they're putting into their bodies is huge, both for clients and then also for practitioners, because it really is, to be totally blunt, like garbage in, garbage out. Absolutely. So people that come to me and say, I want to heal other people, I want to help others, you got to start with yourself always. But then also you have a responsibility to your clients to be taking care of this instrument that you're then putting on them. And that's not to say that you can't go out and have a couple cocktails with your friends the night before. But if you know you have clients first thing in the morning, then that's something that you probably want to just monitor so that you're really showing up in the best form that you can for your clients.
And I think that's going back to what you said about knowing yourself and what feels good for you, where, one person could have a glass of wine every single night and function totally fine, and another person might feel totally groggy or their energy's down. One cup of coffee may be totally fine, and too much is too much. So I think knowing that.
Exactly.
One of the things that I also love that you said about food was chocolate, because I'm a big chocolate person, and chocolate is good, right? Dark chocolate is grounding.
Yes.
Yeah, and you provide it in your office, or people often recommend having a piece of chocolate.
Yeah, it's very grounding. The darker that you can get, 70, 80, 90% cacao, is ideal. Fair trade, non-GMO, organic, if you can do it. But fair trade is super, super, super important, especially for products like chocolate, so that we're really honoring the
good energy.
Exactly. Yeah. The other countries that we submit to our neocolonialism, which I won't get into. In any case,
another conversation.
For another time. So because the darker the chocolate also has less sugar content in it, so that's why that's really important. But yeah, it helps bring the body back into a grounded state. Sometimes people can get really way out there after a session, or as a practitioner, you might find yourself really ungrounded after a session. So just a small little piece of dark chocolate can have amazing. You might have a tummy ache after that.
No, that's good. That's great.
Yeah.
My mom always jokes that chocolate is our antidepressant.
Yeah.
So, a little piece every day.
It does.
Good Belgian dark chocolate. Yeah. And then the second thing I wanted to go back to on the self-care point was people in your life. So, for me, I've noticed on the path that I'm in, there's certain relationships that are maybe toxic or that are not making me feel the way that I want to feel in those interactions. Have you found, or do you have sort of a process of how you screen friendships or acquaintances or people that you come into contact with? And how do you say, like, not happening?
It's so true. It happens so frequently as we walk through life, right? We get people that come into our lives, and we have an opportunity to make a discernment between this person's healthy for me, this person isn't. I think when we're first moving on a path of kind of self-awareness and self-growth, we go through this kind of big purging process, right? Yeah. So anytime you make a big shift in your lifestyle and you get healthier, or you bring yourself up to a different level, they're, again, the same way that we were talking about with the attunement process, where things have to fall away that aren't that same resonance. And so that can, for a lot of people, that can be really challenging, because it includes family, it can include really close friends. And one of my biggest things that I talk with clients about that is honesty and authenticity, and really coming from a place of loving forgiveness, and an understanding of what the relationship came into your life to teach you. I found that the moment that we understand what a relationship was meant to teach us, it either can shift and grow with us, or it falls away on its own. So these days, I don't spend too much time forcing. I have to remind myself of that. Relationships in my life or out of my life, because I trust that if I am at the vibration that I want to be at, what needs to come into my life of that same vibration will, and what doesn't actually won't be able to be around me anymore. So, and what happened to me when I went on the Reiki master path was all of a sudden all these people in my life that I loved couldn't stand to be around me anymore.
Interesting.
And I got a lot of, gosh, you're just too happy all the time, or you're too positive, or, didn't want to hear some of the things that I had to say. And it was really painful because I was like, here I am, healthier than I've ever been in my life.
Feeling better.
Exactly. And feeling like a better person in general, like that I had more to give. And all of a sudden, people that I really cared about were just actually opting out of my life. So I tell a lot of my students and a lot of my clients that the best defense is a good offense, right? And so when we are constantly working our process, when we are constantly looking at our stuff, what comes into our energy field is usually of that same vibration. If it's not, then there's something there for it to teach you.
Okay.
So anymore, if I get somebody that comes into my life that I'm like, ooh, this doesn't feel good, rather than immediately saying, bye-bye, I first go, what? Now why is that here?
Okay.
And so then I try to kind of take a look at that and understand what that relationship is in my life to teach me. And sometimes it is about learning to say no, right? But more often than not, if we don't immediately discount it or immediately tense up and push it away, we get an opportunity to create a healing both for ourselves and for the other person that's involved in that.
Yeah.
But when we can see those relationships as lesson bringers and have compassion for the other person, then we don't get in this push-pull of this power struggle of me versus you. You're good for me, you're bad for me. Instead, we get into, okay, what can you teach me? And also, how can I see myself in you?
Yeah.
Because 9 times out of 10, the things that really bug us in other people are just being reflected back to us to take a look at inside of ourselves. Yeah.
That's the worst, but the best. So you recently made a move to Santa Fe from San Diego. How long did it take you to find Santa Fe? What was your process, and why did you choose to relocate here?
Yeah, Santa Fe is such an amazing vibration to it, to sound really woo-woo. I've known for a very long time that San Diego wasn't my home. We relocated there when I was 9 years old from Massachusetts, and I don't think I ever got over it.
Interesting, yeah.
It just, for me, never felt like home. I had a really hard time feeling that I could make deep, strong connections there, which is kind of ironic because right before I left and the year before
those were all the best things.
I made some really great friends that are still there. So probably about 5 years ago, I really had a sense of like, okay, I at some point I have to get out of San Diego. When is it going to be? And then about 3 years ago, I really started kind of interviewing places. I'm lucky enough that in addition to my Reiki practice, as that was building, I also owned a marketing consulting company. And so I had a lot of opportunity to get to travel, work from other places in the world. And so I took that opportunity for 3 years to really, anytime there was a possibility to go somewhere that was different,
check it out.
Go check it out.
Cool.
And I was kind of like dating other cities, trying to figure out where's the one. And I came to Santa Fe totally unexpectedly. I had a friend that I cared for in the last months of his life, and he was from New Mexico.
Okay.
And we had the same birthday, not year, but birthday. And so I was sort of like, after he passed away, thought that I would come and just see where he was from. And he was raised in Taos. And so I flew into Albuquerque, came through Santa Fe, and made my way up to Taos. And I remember the moment that I got off the plane in Albuquerque and I looked at this amazing New Mexico sky. It was sunset. And I was just like, I've never seen a sky like this before in my life. And I was like, this is home.
You just knew.
This is it. And it was really ironic to me because New Mexico would never have been a place that I would have really considered or thought about before. I was thinking like Portland, Seattle, Asheville, Burlington, other places, I guess, on the coast.
Yeah.
And so it was really kind of fascinating to be here. And then I came back again several months later just to make sure that it wasn't wrapped up in my grief process, right? Yeah, which could happen. And it was the same exact feeling when I came here. So there's something very beautifully rich and deep about not only the culture here, but the connection to the land. A lot of people talk about the energy that feels differently here. And they call it the land of enchantment is actually the name of the state, but a lot of people call it the land of entrapment. So I found that out when I got here, that people will come and then just never leave.
Wow.
But there's another phenomenon that happens where people will come and won't be able to stay. So people will the energy will sort of push them out if it's not
the right
fit for them. So I really found a very amazing deepening of my own process and a stillness and a quietness to being here that is not typically of my nature. I'm a Gemini and constantly moving around doing lots of different things. So being here has really forced me to slow down in this miraculous way that has been such a gift and such a challenge all at the same time.
Yeah, I think there's so much more we can talk about. We can continue this conversation probably over many episodes of conversations, but this has been really cool for me just to hear more about your journey and where you're going and what your plans are. And I think there's a lot of similarities in what we're trying to do and what we're trying to spread. And I think more and more I find that there are people, maybe it's those people that are coming into my life and my path for a reason, but who are on a similar trajectory and it's cool to see that there's going to be some amazing shifts happening. So thank
Yes.
you for all you do.
Thank you so much for coming here and for interviewing me and for the amazing work that you're doing and offering to our community. It's you are such a light just in who you are as a being, but what you're bringing to the table and everything that you're doing, I'm absolutely honored to be on your path. And thank you so much for coming to visit me in Santa Fe.
Thank you.